Well, hello, and just this fourth part now of this short little series that I'm just doing under the overall banner of Sent and Send. Really important little series. Many of you actually know me for a phrase that I use very often: "He wastes nothing, he gets you ready." And this fourth of this little mini series here, he wastes nothing, he gets you ready, was part one. Part two, he redeems the low points. Part three, he repeats the high points. If you haven't watched them, you can catch up with them. I post them on Instagram. They're on my YouTube channel and Facebook. And then this last one, which I actually think is probably one of the most important uh, principles for us to learn, and that is believe your story. It's so easy in these days to believe the stories of those that stand on platforms and hold microphones and travel around the world. And of course, that's wonderful and that's important for us to believe the stories of the healing evangelists and to position ourselves to receive from them. It's very important. But the real purpose of what I want to share with you in this last of this mini series is that the most important story for you to believe is your story, the way that God has worked through your life. And I have really made a habit of just taking note of details. I always say to people, I'm not a journaler. I carry a Moleskine journal. I've done for many, many years now. And I write lots of things, scribble notes, and I do take note of certain things and write them down. I just pay attention. So my goal for this session is to encourage every one of you watching to believe your story, to take note of just the things that happen and how God works these things out. And I base a lot of what I teach on a picture that we see in the Bible. We actually see it at the end of Genesis, and we see it in Hebrews. It's told slightly differently. In Genesis, we see that Jacob, it says, just before he prophesies over his 12 sons, just nearing the end of his life, he leans on the head of his bed. And then in Hebrews, it actually says he leaned on his staff. Just before he prophesied some of the greatest prophecies recorded in the Bible, those 12 sons and the prophecies about them and their names. And we see just the extraordinary fulfillment of those. But what does it mean? What does it mean when it says that he leaned on his staff? I want to suggest to you that it means he believed his story. He trusted his story. And I imagine, and I heard a wonderful man of God, Dr. David Ireland, preach on this in great detail. It's a wonderful message. But he talked about how that staff would have been marked with the great events of Jacob's life. It wasn't a thin stick that could break at any moment. It was a solid staff, the shepherd's staff used to prod and to even to prod away the predatory animals or to prod the sheep. It was a decent staff, and it would even have had the weight, it's said, for a shepherd to lean on the staff and take a nap in the middle of the night, perhaps when the grass was too wet to sit on or too muddy or something like that. And so this staff, it was strong, and it would be marked, etched with the great moments of Jacob's life. We know them well, especially, don't we, that one where he wrestled with the angel through the night and his name was changed. It would have been marked, and Jacob's staff would have been marked with each of the births of his sons and their marriages and their children and the great events of his life. And so now, at the end of his life, he's just preparing, as it were, to prophesy over his 12 sons, to release the father's blessing to the 12 sons, recorded so beautifully at the end of Genesis. He leans on his staff. And the picture is that he can put his whole weight on his staff. He can lean on his staff, believe on his staff, trust his staff. In other words, he can lean on his story, trust his story, and believe his story. And that's my challenge for you. As we think more about this theme of sent and send, we're all sent. I believe that we're all sent first from heaven. Jesus said, as the Father sent me, so I send you. And then I believe that we're to be sent again through the church and out, as it were, to see the expansion of the influence of the King, the establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth. And of course, we read in Revelation 11:15, the kingdoms of this earth have become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ. And so we're sent, and as we're sent, we have this story. And that's why in many respects it's so important to this theme, because it's so easy to believe the stories of those who are in leadership in the church, who are, in my language, paid to go to church. And so we end up believing their story and aspire to their story. And yet really what we must do is to believe our story, so that as we're sent out into our sphere of influence to do what we're called to do, to preach the message or to carry the message that we carry with the method that we are gifted in, to the metron, the sphere of influence that we are given. And I'll unpack that another time probably. But as we carry our story of how God has prepared us. Because remember, he wastes nothing. He gets you ready. It's my story. He prepared me, nursing, working in prison, training as a prison governor, and he's prepared me every step of the way with relationships and encounters. He wastes nothing. Even the boring night shifts, he wastes nothing. He got me ready, and he redeems the low points. And one of Susan mine, I share a lot about the loss of my dad, and how 32 years after his death, I was able to redeem those 32 lost years by really embracing my identity as a son. And of course, we see that he repeats the victories. And Sue and I had the great victory of infertility overcome, and we get to minister to people out of that strength, because the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And through it all, we have story. We have the story of how he's led us and guided us, put us on a plane 4 days after 9/11 to the other side of the pond, provided a home for us, a job for us, a way of life for us, friends for us, a ministry for us. He's done all those things. And so when we stand in a crisis, we're able to lean on our staff and to say, we believe our story. We can trust our story. We can trust the way that God has worked through our lives. And that's what I want for you. I want you to know that you can believe your story, because here is one of the most beautiful truths. When you believe your story, it's where your authority comes from. And that's why our healing of infertility, we get to pray for people all around the world, and we see breakthrough, and we know that we have authority in that area. Can we guarantee it? Of course we can't. We're trusting on God to release his authority, as it were, through us, but we're leaning on our story. We can trust our story. We can put the whole weight of our life, our current circumstance, our current challenge. We can lean on our staff when the ground's muddy, so to speak, when the ground's wet. We can rest, take a moment's rest. And just as Jacob was able to lean on his staff just before he gave these extraordinary 12 prophecies to his sons, he could put the whole weight of his life on his staff. And that's my challenge to you. As I sum up this just short series, I do believe it is a series that has keys to your destiny, keys to the impact and the influence that your life will have. And, so often we believe the story of the man or woman on the stage with the microphone as Christians, and that's good and that's wonderful. But what we really need to do is to learn to believe our story, to see that he wastes nothing in our lives. And he gets us ready, to see that he redeems every low point, every place of absence. He redeems, he puts value back into those seasons, and he makes those seasons available to be refilled for his purposes and his glory. And of course, he repeats the highs, the victories. He loves to do that. And it's a key. It's another key for our destiny. Wherever you've seen victory before, it's a key. He wants to do it again. Maybe it's promotion. Maybe it's working in sales. Maybe it's the way you work with a team. Those are great victories. They're victories that are your story. And my challenge is, will you join me and believe your story? It is a key, an absolute key to your future. And as we are the sent ones, sent from heaven with Jesus, as the Father sent me, he said, so I send you. And then through the church, I would say, through the apostolic family, something else I'll be unpacking more and more. We are sent again, carrying, as it were, the gospel of the kingdom, the good news of the kingdom, and to increase the influence of King Jesus wherever we go. Do you believe your story? Whatever your story, you've been healed from something, set free from something, delivered from something, seen a breakthrough. Believe your story. Lean on your staff, and not just for you. release it to others and allow his authority to flow through you, whoever you are, whatever you do, wherever you go. You're sent ones. And I'm going to carry on doing these as often as I can. And I want to just give you a quick sneak preview. I really sense that God is stirring in me to encourage a movement, of sent ones, that every believer should know they are sent, and every church leader know how to send them. And I don't mean to China as missionaries. I mean to the office on the corner of the street, to the train driver's cab on Monday morning, for us all to know. And so he wastes nothing. He gets you ready. It's my privilege to have someone. I'll be with them next week, actually, at Awakening Europe. They had that tattooed on their hand. They did not want to forget that message. And I'll also, if you're interested, be at Sun Corner, Billericay tomorrow afternoon with one of my very best friends, Andrew Cannon, evangelist Rob Purnell, who's been organising an event, and Helen Youssef. It's going to be some great worship. So if you're free and you're near Billericay tomorrow, come and join us. We're going to see the preaching of the good news of the kingdom, the gospel of the kingdom. So come and join me. Remember, he wastes nothing. He gets you ready. Remember, he redeems every low point of your life. He puts value back in. Remember, he repeats the highs, the victories. He wants to do them again. And know this, if you believe your story, it's where your authority comes from. See you again soon.